Hey y'all. So a lot happened last night, and I guess the key to what I want to talk about is really that idea that King talked about of being more committed to order and justice. And there are some things last night that happened that were disorderly, and not that were definitely within that larger context. So let's think about some of the happenings that happened yesterday. A brother that I don't know, but he was been kind of keen and instrumental, particularly in organizing some of these protests, and he was arrested with a bullhorn and allegedly a bat. And the charges are kind of hilarious as far as causing disruption with a weapon and resisting arrest, and what was it, the one that attempted to flee or whatever, right? So let's think about that, particularly in the context of there were four instances yesterday of white people using their cars, attempting to or actually ramming protesters. As far as I know, none of them were arrested. One of them, I know for a fact, as I saw the videos, cops were on the scenes and he wasn't arrested in attempting to use his car as a weapon. You let go, and cops were there. It was on camera. So let's kind of put this aside and talk about what was order and what was justice. One was acceptable, one wasn't. One disturbance was acceptable, one wasn't. And let's be real here. A lot of times, resisting arrest charges are total BS. What you'll see a lot on how they happen is officers will take an aggressive response to a situation, attempt to quote unquote detain somebody, right? And as soon as they might show signs of resisting, and sometimes it can be as simple as when a cop grabs your arm, you jerk it, all right? And somebody says, people say, just stay calm, give in, right? Have somebody grab your arm and not try to pull it away, all right? I just try it. It doesn't matter who it is. Like you're talking about submitting to BS and acting like that's going to save your life. It doesn't necessarily mean your life's going to be saved. It doesn't increase the chances, sure, but particularly if you're black in America, that's just not what's going to happen. And so it becomes real easy. So they'll put on this resisting arrest charge, and then what they'll try to do is figure out another way to justify why they initiated the arrest. And that's where kind of originally, particularly with the videos, they say he was under arrest for resisting arrest, BS, and then after the fact they added on the causing disturbance with a weapon charge. So obvious they're attempting to justify that. But even then, when we think about this, MPD knew who this guy was. They knew he was organizing protests. They targeted him for this arrest, knowing that was going to kick some stuff off. Like this, police aren't dumb, right? A lot of this stuff that they do is intentional, and so it was an intentional action. They knew it was going to kick some stuff off. They just knew it. They wanted to harass him. It's a very typical tactic of police when it comes to targeting, particularly black civil rights organizers and protesters. So it's a pretty normal thing. But again, it's order versus justice, right? And so with these statues being taken down, we had to think about it particularly and specifically within the context of not just the United States, but within the context of Wisconsin. So yes, these individual statues weren't necessarily in of themselves unjust, but effectively what they do represent is an unjust order in a lot of ways, and particularly hypocrisy of it, with Wisconsin being one of the worst states when it comes to racial disparities in the country, with Milwaukee being the most segregated city in the country, with Wisconsin being one of the most segregated states in the country. A lot of these things can vary depending on the specific metrics you use, but at the same time, Wisconsin's just one of the worst, period, and particularly when it comes to the existence of black people within the state. So what these end up representing, it doesn't matter who they are individually. They end up representing hypocrisy, and the continued racial oppression of this state and of this country. Because you can put up a statue all you want of somebody that fought for justice, but if the government continues to be an unjust government, to be a racially oppressive government, what the hell does it matter about the statue? And effectively, it just doesn't matter. So if you're more upset about the statue than you are about the wider justice, check yourself and explore and think deeply about those uncomfortable feelings, particularly within the wider context. I'm not saying you have to be totally down or okay with the statue and be like, yay, take it down. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying don't condemn it. Try and understand where it's coming from. Even if you don't necessarily agree with the action, try and understand why it happened. Think deeply about that and concentrate deeply about that. These are the things that are the most challenging, particularly on when it comes to symbols that some of us might really love and appreciate, but think about it from a different perspective. These symbols are racially oppressive. Like for me, I can't stand the American flag. To me, it's nothing but representing blood of genocide and my own ancestors being enslaved and dying. My great great grandfather watched his father lynched. When I see those numbers of the now we're 5,000 known lynchings, it's my family. And I also learned during the creation of the lynching memorial that weird backstory. So my last name is Browngen. My dad's original last name is Higginbotham. My mom's original last name is Brown. They took the Gin from Higginbotham, changed up the spelling a little bit, and the Brown changed up the spelling with it and made Browngen. It's a black white family and so we're this mixed race family and all this stuff. And that reminds me, I'm going to have to do a whole thing on white passing, as well as just kind of the BS of colorism and all you light skins out there that get all up in your feelings about being made fun of in middle and high school about not being black enough. Now, a little side note, what's funny is the brothers and sisters in this city, when I was growing up, were trying to be like, no, you ain't white, right? You one of us is really funny. And no, I appreciate that though. Those of that. I appreciate the challenge of these brothers and sisters when I was in middle and high school about who I was. It's not like I thought I was white, but at the same time, didn't really understand what it meant to be, particularly at that point, what it meant to be white passing in the United States. But that's a whole nother thing. But it definitely hits on that choosing order of justice. Because every day, either I can choose to support the white supremacist order, this racial oppressive order, or I can stand on the side of justice, and potentially put myself at risk in various different ways. But see, that's the kind of thing. You have to challenge yourselves between that, with everything that is uncomfortable. We have to push ourselves through and trying to understand what this country really is. Because again, like I said, that flag that a lot of y'all that even vote blue on the left might be down for this, might have it waving. You might be a veteran, and you might have fought in wars that I view as nothing but imperialist in nature, and oppressive and part of that racial oppression. But push through that uncomfortable and just try and understand. Again, you don't have to agree. You can understand something but not necessarily agree with it. So work through that discomfort and try and understand why certain things are happening within the context of Madison, our racial disparities, our oppressive natures in and of itself, Wisconsin, can't forget Dane County in the United States, and particularly Western colonialism or European colonialism, if you want to be real with it, because Western is the East-West stuff is still weird. I get it, but it still centers a particular type of viewpoint in the world, right? But again, these are things that we have to understand. I mean, again, with Bascom Hill, stolen land, we have to try and understand the roots of these things. Because what's happening now isn't just the arrest of the brother yesterday. It isn't just the 4 cars. It isn't just Breonna Taylor. It isn't, just Floyd. It isn't just Tony Robinson. It isn't just Michael Brown. It isn't just Emmett Till. It's a lot. It's everything. Like this, you feel it in your bones, in your blood. Like this is generational. And we know, particularly through science and research, that trauma can be encoded in your DNA. But not just that, also culturally. This is generational. You feel it. You feel it. It's hard to describe to folks that ain't there, seeing it, because it's not your family, but you feel it. You feel that 400, that 500 years. You feel it in your bones, you feel it in the blood, you feel your ancestors. And particularly those that the idea of woke, like that's kind of a little bit of what it is. You feel it. And so this is where a lot of that becomes, again, important, pushing past and seeing, taking an honest picture and an honest analysis of the history of the United States from 400 years ago all the way to the present day, on exactly why things are the way they are and why we are and where we are, and the choices that were made or the choices that weren't made. We continually invest in police over health and human services. We continually invest in our military over everything else. We divest from humanity in this country in some very profound ways. Even at the individual level, we divest from humanity, and a lot of our city and state leaders across the country have a very hard time making that real investment, even if they ideologically might be on the right side, like that action step, right? So it's about exposing that hypocrisy and breaking through a lot of that these symbols, even the symbols that we put up that are so-called for justice, ring hollow. White Madison, you can keep your MLK Day. I don't want no part in how you celebrate MLK. I don't want any part in that. It's messed up on how y'all celebrate MLK. And a lot of your brothers and sisters to take part in some of these celebrations. Woof, come on now. This whitewashed version that we dig into, man, most of y'all, a lot of y'all that even are so-called on the side of justice wouldn't be able to stand King today. Wouldn't have been able to handle him. We forget he was the most hated man in America at the time of his death. Hell, most of Black America didn't even like King at that point. I mean, most of I forget the exact polls, but he was not like the super popular cat. A lot of clergy didn't like him. I mean, Black America isn't a monolith. And for fair reason, some people just thought he didn't go far enough. Other people thought he went too far, particularly when he got on his anti-war as well as his massive redistribution of wealth. Going even beyond just reparations, you come for reparations and a massive redistribution of wealth across color lines. And the way he spoke, a lot of y'all wouldn't be able to handle him because he would have called out your hypocrisy, called out a lot of folks standing more for order than for justice, more for funding for their nonprofits than for justice. And that's a problem. When we celebrate this guy that you don't necessarily actually ideologically agree with. I'm sorry. That's a problem. But that's standing, again, more for order and than justice, more for the myths of this country that we love to tell ourselves than for justice. Because again, and I'll have to do another video for this, but I'll walk through it. But you cannot take an honest assessment of the history of the United States and walk away truly believing that it is a just nation, that it has done more good in the world than bad. These things aren't black and white, but man, from its founding to who it supported internationally, of some fascist dictators, right-wing authoritarian dictators through and throughout. And again, none of these things absolve other nations or other cultural atrocities of things that were kicked off by like Stalin, or the Nazis, or even atrocities in China or elsewhere. None of that excuses what they're doing, but it's conservatives all the tout that taking responsibility, but It's exactly what it is. It's taking responsibility for your own actions, for this country's actions. I grew up here, and I want to push this. I mean, it's home. It's my home, but we need to take responsibility for our actions as a nation. 'Cause this is not who we should be, and we could be so much more, so much better, and we need to continually, and the fight against white supremacy is part of this. But personally, I think even the arguments for black liberation and against white supremacy can go even further in it. I think those things are particularly limiting because, again, oppression doesn't begin or end there. It doesn't begin or end in capitalism or being anti-capitalist either. Yes, these are real mechanisms, particularly that we fall under. But oppression, these aren't the sole owners of oppression, right? It can go a long way to alleviating things. So it's really about reimagining who we are as a people, as a nation, as a species, and thinking broader about how do we center kind of the hierarchy of needs in building a society. So what creates a healthy human being? What creates a healthy family? What creates a healthy community and a healthy society? What are these things that we need to put in place? And centering and building, my thought is effectively building a government, a constitution around those central ideas. In my mind, the real fight is reimagining what this nation really can be, and organizing around the idea of a writing a new constitution and forming a new government. Now that's dangerous and takes a lot of work. It's not something you can just up and do, and particularly with how strong the organizing is on the right, particularly around constitutional stuff and legal things. But at the same time, we shouldn't shy away from that fight in legally restructuring and reimagining what this country, this government, how it functions and what it is in its entirety. But challenge yourself. Be more for justice than for order. Even if you don't agree with the individual actions, don't let those individual actions that you might disagree with dissuade you from and don't get too caught into a tree. Don't miss the forest. Because if you pull out, and if you disagree with this individual action, if you pull out, there's going to be many, many more actions, many, many more things that you do agree with. There have been far, far, far more peaceful protests than there has been anything as far as, taking down some statues that may or may not have been a good idea. Again, I understand, and personally, I don't care that statues are taken down. I'm just kind of, again, speaking in that mold, in that way of where your viewpoint might be. So challenge yourself, think beyond that, and see this as a whole and within its scope. That this movement isn't about creating an oppressive nation. It's about tearing down oppression, tearing down empty symbols of freedom, empty symbols of justice, and working to replace these empty symbols with real substance that actually creates this society that these symbols claim to be here for.